What's up nerds, my name is Abdul Nafe and I am a freelance motion graphic artist. And in this video we're going to be learning how to create this amazing 3D render which you see on your screen right now. Now this class should be pretty easy to follow along even for beginners, and we'll not only be creating this 3D render, but we'll also focus on learning and understanding the tools which we use so that you can use them in your future projects as well. So ideally this class is made for Blender beginners who have little experience in Blender 3D. However, you will be expected to know the basics like navigating the viewport, using the edit mode, rotating, scaling and moving stuff, etc. In this class we're going to be covering the basics of 3D modeling, texturing, lighting, rendering and post-processing in Blender 3D. Now the good thing about this class specifically is the fact that this class will show you the raw process of a 3D artist in creating art. We will be solving all the problems and making all the creative decisions together. So what are you waiting for? Just start this class today and take your Blender 3D skills to the next level. Thank you. Alright guys, so we are inside the beautiful world of Blender 3D, and here we're going to be creating that amazing chess scene which you saw in the intro. So yeah, without any further ado, let's start. So first of all, I'm just going to get rid of everything. Select all and delete. Just save your project, by the way. So we're going to be starting with making the chess pieces. Now we're going to be making, we're obviously not going to be making all the pieces because that's just going to take too long, and they're not going to be visible in the scene either. So we're going to be making a pawn and the king, right? So the two most important chess pieces in my opinion. So what I did was I found two references. We have two references, one for the pawn and the other for the king. So here you go, this is the reference king. I'm just going to zoom in. This is the king and this is the pawn. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be starting with the pawn first. So I'm just going to drag this in Blender, and now you're going to see that the rotation and position are messed up. The position seems to be fine, but the rotation is messed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt G to reset the position, location, and Alt R to reset the rotation. Now you're going to see that it's flat, and that's exactly how we want. However, we want it to be vertical and facing this way, right? So we want it to face this way. So I'm just going to press R, X, and 90. Now what I just did was I rotated it, and I'm just going to be doing it again. R to rotate it, X to lock it to X-axis, and 90 degrees to rotate it exactly 90 degrees, right? Or you can obviously just use this this rotation tool. Just hold Control so that it's rotating in increments of 5, and just make sure on the top left hand side you're going to see rotation 90 degrees, and when that is 90 degrees just left click. So yeah, RX 90 works for me. So apart from that, I'm going to be doing R, Z, and 90, which is going to rotate it 90 degrees in the Z axis, the same exact procedure. So now we're going to be starting the modeling. Now what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be, first of all, I think this is way too large. I think something like that should be a good scale. Maybe something like that. Yeah, so I'm just going to be moving it up in the Z axis, something like that. And now let's go to these image settings, so object data properties, and we're going to be going to the opacity, and we're going to be reducing the opacity, right? So I think 0.3 should be good. Something like that should be good. Now what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be starting from the top. So we're going to be adding a sphere, add mesh, and sphere, UV sphere. And I'm just going to be scaling it down and making sure that it matches. It somewhat matches the size of the head of the pawn. I think something like that should be good. I'll just turn on the X-ray mode because we're going to be using that. I'm going to be telling you the reason why in just a second. Something like that should be a good position. So the reason why we're using using X-ray mode is because if I tap into edit mode, if I press tab to go into edit mode, and if I select all of them, you're going to see that only half of them are going to be selected because we can't really see the ones behind. Okay, but if I turn on the X-ray mode now, if I select all of them, you're going to see that all of them are going to be selected. So that's exactly what we want. And what we're going to be doing is that let's go ahead and select these vertices and let's delete them. Right? So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to be selecting all these, this bottom row, and we're going to be extruding them in the Z-axis. So press E to extrude and press Z to lock it to Z-axis. Something like that should be good. I'm going to extrude it again in the Z-axis, something like that, and now scale it up to match the reference. Now we're just going to be tracing the reference, and it's going to be pretty easy. E and Z again. So this is just some basic reference modeling. Just tracing over the reference, scale it down. Actually, I'm just going to be scaling something like that, and I'm going to be moving it up a little in the Z-axis, and then I'm going to be extruding it again, and let's just do this. Yeah, perfect. So next I'm just going to be pressing E and Z again. Let's extrude it, something like that, and again Now it doesn't have to be super accurate, but just try to match your reference as closely as possible. Now here you're going to see that it's not actually matching our reference. And to fix that, what we're going to do is that we can just get out of our edit mode. Just press tab to do that. Select our image, and we're going to be moving. Let's just turn the extra mode off for a minute. Press G and then Y, and just move it in the y-axis slightly so that it matches our pawn a bit better. Something like that. And let's just continue with our process. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I'm just going to be doing it something like that. Now here you're going to see that it's not actually perfectly matching, and that is because this picture was taken from an actual camera, therefore it has perspective, so it's not totally horizontal. But yeah, we're going to be dealing with that in just a second. So let's just bring it down and scale it up, something like that. Extrude it down, scale it up even more, extrude it down again, and this time scale it down a little, something like that. Extrude it down, and then again, and this time you're going to be scaling it up quite a bit to match this bottom bulge. Let's just move it a little up, down, something like that. And you're going to see that we're matching it pretty closely. However, obviously it's not perfect because this is an actual photo and not a 3D render, so obviously doing it perfectly is not going to be possible. Anyway, so I'm just going to be moving it. Okay, so for this, what we can do is that we can just pull it down, something like that, and then we can just select this whole area. So we can just press E to extrude and press S to scale up, and then we can press Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y axis only and prevent it from scaling up in the Z axis. So something like that is what we want. Now you're going to see that it looks like a pawn. Yeah, it looks pretty close to a pawn. However, obviously it's very blocky and it's very chunky, so we're going to be fixing that with a subdivision surface modifier. Alright, so let's go into the modifier menu and add a modifier, the subdivision surface modifier. Now you're going to see that it's pretty smooth, and we do want it to be like that, but it's a little too smooth for us, right? So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to go to the front view. Let's go to the edit mode again and start adding loop cuts. Okay, now I'm just going to add a loop cut right here to give it like some thickness. I think something like that should be good, or maybe even a loop cut right there as well to tighten up that edge. I think something like that should be good for the top, and for the bottom I think it's looking pretty good actually. Oh, never mind. Just add a loop cut right there to make this, to give it a little more definition. Maybe one right there to make it sharper as well. Now you can just take help from your reference, but I would not suggest copying it too precisely, because then where's your own creativity then? I would suggest you to be creative yourself. Okay, so this bottom part I want it to be pretty sharp, so I'm just going to add a loop cut right there and one right there as well. Perfect. Now you're going to see that this bottom is not actually covered. It does not have a face. So to fix that, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to go to edit mode. We're going to be alt clicking any of these lines, any of these points, to select the whole line. So I'm just going to press right here, alt, and press it. So you're going to see that it's going to select the whole what do you call it, the whole row, the whole loop. And now if you press this F, you're going to see that it's going to just fill it in. F for fill. And you're going to see that it's still a little blocky. However, the shape seems pretty nice to me. I'm just going to bump up the segments, bump up the levels of the subdivision surface to 2. I think it's pretty good looking now. And just shade it smooth. So that is perfect. Cool. So yeah, it's not perfect here. And one thing which we can do which might fix it. To do that, what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to go down to this object data properties, this menu, and let's go to normals and auto smooth. Now if I turn this on, you're going to see that the way it works is a little complicated, but you can just set this angle, and the default 30 just works perfectly fine, and it gets rid of those weird shading issues which you get sometimes. So but since this is a beginner's tutorial, I'm not really going to explain how it actually works, but yeah, just turn this on and see if it fixes your problems. And yeah, it did. So apparently our pawn is basically complete, and let's move on to the next shape, which is going to be our king. So I'm going to select this. Actually, let's just name the sphere. I'm going to name it pawn, and this is going to be ref pawn, reference of pawn. And I'm going to select both of those, and I'm going to press M, and I'm just going to click this move to new collection, and we can just move it to a new collection. And let's name it pawn. Press OK. And I'm going to see it's going to create a group, it's going to create a collection in which we have these two things. So we can just hide them individually, hide them all together. But I'm just going to select all of them, and I'm going to be pressing G and Y and moving it right there. Perfect. So now our pawn is basically complete. Let's move on to our next shape, which is going to be the king. So I'm just going to drop the reference king. By the way, I'm going to be attaching both of these references in the project section of this class, so you can be sure to, so you can feel free to download them and use them. Yeah, cool. So I'm just going to be dropping that in. Let's do the same exact thing, Alt G and Alt R, and I'm going to be pressing R, X and 90, and R, Z and 90 as well to rotate it. Perfect. So now I'm going to be scaling it down, obviously. Let's place it right here, just let's see to get an idea of the scale, because a pawn, a king is a little larger than a pawn. I think something like that might be good. A little smaller, maybe. Something like that might be good. Perfect. Or maybe even a little larger. Something like that. Yeah, that's perfect. That's the perfect size. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to be selecting this and moving it over. Okay, so the basic mesh, we can copy it. We can copy the basic mesh from this pawn as well, and then we can just make changes to it. So I'm just going to press Shift D and Y to copy it, duplicate it. From you duplicate things by pressing Shift D, and then we're going to be moving it to something like that. So we've just locked it to the Y-axis, and I'm going to be pressing Tab to go into the extra mode. And now let's start shaping this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be deleting the top part because it's going to be totally different. And let's actually start moving these and placing them where they should be. Something like that. Something like that should be good. Let's move this out. Oops. Let's press G and Y. Oh, sorry, Z. Something like that should be good. Same with this. And same exact thing with this as well. Let me just move it here and let's scale it up a little. And this whole thing, I'm going to be moving this up. GZ. Let's move it up. And obviously we're going to scale it up as well to match the shape of that king. And let's move these up as well. Oops. Press G and Z. Or something like that, and obviously scale it up. But we're going to be moving it down a little as well, because we want to copy the shape of this king as closely as we can. Let's select this and let's scale it up a little. So you're going to see that it's starting to look like an actual king. Not an actual king, a chess king. But yeah, you get the point. Let's actually select all of this. Let's move it a little up. And then let's just scale it up. Something like that. I'm just going to be scaling this up as well. Let's move it a little down. Something like that. And do the same exact thing with this as well. Move it a little down. Something like that. And of course we're going to be taking this one as well. Scaling it up. Move it up. And now one thing which we can do to select all these is that we can just alt click these, this line right here, and we can just scale this up as well. Actually, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be taking this part, all this, and I'm going to be moving it up. And let's actually select this part, so not that line right there. And I'm going to be pressing S and Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y axis. And I'm going to be pressing, I'm going to be scaling it up like that. Let's see how it actually looks. I think it looks pretty good. The only thing which I'm a little concerned about is this area is a little too small. I'm just going to be scaling it up, something like that, so that it looks natural. And yeah, one other thing which we have in our reference is that the king, for the king, the bottom of this piece is not that tight. So I'm just going to be pressing Alt and selecting this, and I'm going to be pressing G and Z, and I'm going to be moving it down slightly, and this one as well. Press Alt and select that, press G and Z and move it up, so that we have a more rounded shape. Now the bottom you're going to see is looking pretty much like a king. However, we have this issue right here, so let's actually see what the issue is, and let's try to fix it. So you're going to see that we have, okay, so we have this weird issue right here, in which these are being connected for some reason. I have no idea why that is, but let's actually try to solve this problem. So let's actually go to the edge select mode. Let's select this edge, and let's try to select similar, and I did amount of faces around an edge. So you're going to see all these are going to be selected, and we're going to be pressing delete and edges. So once you delete the edges, you're going to see that those issues are going to be fixed, and those basically extra vertices, which I don't know where did they come from, but wherever they came from, we have now fixed them. And yeah, that is a part of 3D modeling. You should be able to solve problems and like come up with solutions. And yeah, I had no idea how to fix that, and I just did it in front of you guys. So just to show you that everything you do in 3D modeling is not actually planned, and there are some things which are unexpected as well. So yeah, I hope that's a good lesson for you guys. Oops, I did not mean to do that. I'm just going to select this line right here, that one, and let's scale that up a little bit, something like that, and let's scale this up as well. Never mind, that does not look good. I'm just going to be undoing that. I think this looks pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. And now what I'm going to be doing is that, okay, so we don't have points up there. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting the points, and I'm going to be selecting all of them, and I'm going to be deleting them, vertices. And let's just start from here. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, by the way, just save your project, because I don't want you to lose this all this progress. And let's extrude it up, something like that. Now let's just oops, never mind. Let's just tab out of edit mode, and let's turn this on, and let's position our reference a little better so that it's symmetrical. Go back to edit mode, and we're going to be extruding it a little up, and then a little up as well. And this one, actually I'm just going to be extruding it a little less, something like that. And I'm going to be selecting this whole thing, and let's press E, S and Shift Z to extrude it, but only in the X and Y axes, something like that. And I'm going to be selecting these inside edges and extrude them up, something like that, and then extrude them up again, and let's extrude them up again, once again, something like that, and one final time here. So what we're doing with this is, by the way, let me just move this a little up, and the way you move vertices up is by pressing double G. So it's just gonna move the vertices over the vertices without messing the points. So let's do the same exact thing with this. Yeah, oops, E, S and Shift Z, something like that. That should be good. And the same exact thing with this as well. E, S, Shift Z, and perfect. So this is a little too inside. I'm just going to be going to the edge select mode, and I'm going to be selecting all these edges. Let's just scale them up a little, something like that. Oops, I think I should, yeah, I should press S and Shift Z so that it's not scaling up in Z axis. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. It looks pretty accurate, and I'm satisfied. So let me just select this top edges. Let's go to vertices select mode. Let's just extrude it up, and now this is just the easy part, something like that. Scale it up, perfect. I'm just going to add a loop cut down there to make this edge sharper, something like that. Let's select all these, extrude it up, just make them a little smaller, and extrude, oops, never mind, extrude it up again in the Z axis and bring them down. Now this edge is not that sharp, so I'm just going to make it sharper by adding a loop cut right there. And let's add one right there as well to make this to give this a little more definition, and I'm going to scale that up as well. Perfect. So let's just select all of these vertices, and I think we are good with that. So I'm just going to press F to fill this in, and I think we are basically done with our king except for this top part. So yeah, one thing which you're going to be noticing is that the shading seems to be pretty fine everywhere except for this point. Let's see what the issue with that is. Let's just add a loop cut right there to make it a little smoother, and that's perfect. And one thing which you're going to be noticing is, well, it's not that apparent in this, but there is this weird shading on the top. You're gonna see even if I like shade it smooth, you're gonna see that we have this weird shading. And to fix that, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to go to face select mode. We're going to be selecting this top face, and we're going to be insetting this. And once we inset that, you're going to see that the shading is going to be smooth. Now the way that works is a little too complicated for this tutorial, so I'm not going to go over that. But yeah, we are basically done with our shape of the king. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be making that top thing. So for that, we can just create a new cube, and let's just go to the front mode, front view. Let's scale it down, bring it up, scale it down even more. Oops. Never mind. Scale it down even more, and just position it something like that. Scale it up in the y-axis, a little bit like that. And the reason why I'm leaving some room right here is actually we don't really need to do that. So I'm just going to be selecting it and moving it up, and we do need to leave some room so that the bottom, when it rounds off the bottom, when we add the subdivision surface, it doesn't actually show. So yeah, that's something we need to be careful about. I'm just going to extrude this up, scale it down, extrude it up again, scale it up. This is just the same exact stuff that we've been doing for this tutorial, just extruding and scaling things. I hope it's not difficult. One thing which we can do here is that to make this extra part, we can just select this all, press E, S, and Shift Z, and just scale it up. E for extrude, S for scaling up, and Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y axes. Yeah, perfect. So I'm just gonna be, yeah, we have these top vertices. Oops. So with all these top vertices selected, I'm just gonna be extruding them, and I'm gonna be bringing them down. And let's do it again. This is just very basic and fun stuff actually. Although it is a little repetitive, it is pretty fun, to be honest. I usually do this with music, and it's pretty fun, to be honest. So I'm just going to go to the side view, and you're going to see that we could obviously make this totally flat from both the edges. So the way we do that is by selecting this, pressing S, X, and 0. You're going to see that it's going to align them on the x-axis. It's going to align all the points on one point. But actually I won't do that because I think this 3D look is pretty good. The only thing which I'm going to do is that I'm going to be scaling it down in the x-axis to make it a little thinner, something like that. Let's just get out of our edit mode, and I think it looks pretty good. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier because it's too sharp, and then we're going to be adding some loop cuts. Now you're going to see that it looks absolutely soft, very soft. So let's start adding some loop cuts. I'm going to add one right there. Actually, let's add them to the vertically. Let's add vertical loop cuts first to make sure that they're on the sides, something like that, and something like that. Perfect. So let's add one right here as well. Then let's add one right here. Obviously this is your own choice. You can decide whether you want it to be soft or sharp, because usually chess pieces can vary a lot in their specifics, so it's basically up to you. There are no restrictions on this. I think we're good. Yeah, so that is basically done as well. Let's just increase the segments and just shade it smooth, and let's do that thing. Let's go to turn on the normals and turn on auto smooth so that it fixes a few issues, and that is perfect. So our what do you call it, Also, by the way, I forgot to reduce the opacity, but yeah, I'm just gonna reduce it now. Yeah, so our chess pieces are basically complete, and next up we're gonna be working on the board. We're gonna be modeling the board, and after that we are going to be just setting the whole composition, and then we're gonna be adding the materials, and finally we're gonna be lighting the scene, rendering it, and finally the post-processing. So yeah, the modeling part for the chess pieces is basically complete, and yeah, congratulations for making it this far in the tutorial, and I hope you're enjoying. If you have any problem in this or any other part of this class, then be sure to start a discussion down below, and I'll be sure to help you. So yeah, I'll see you in the next part. Alright guys, so next up we have to make the chessboard. So instead of actually modeling it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using an add-on called a Blender Kit, which you can use to import that asset. And I mean, you could obviously import these chess pieces as well, but I wanted to show you how to model them. So yeah, the chessboard, however, we're going to be importing that using Blender Kit. So in order to actually download that add-on, I'm just going to go to Google, and we're going to search Blender Kit. And if you just search Blender Kit on Google, and instead of going to their website, I'm just going to search it on Google so that I can show you guys. Yeah, Blender Kit, and just click the first link, blenderkit.com, and then you can just press this Blender Kit, download Blender Kit, and it's going to download that. So just press this button right here, and once it's downloaded, what you're going to do, it also shows you these instructions here, so you can just follow these instructions. However, I'm going to be showing you how you can download it and install it. Okay, so once this is downloaded, you're going to go to Blender, and you're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and in these add-ons you have to press this install button right here, and you can just go to wherever you downloaded it. So for example, in downloads, just search for it, and for example here I have Blender Kit. Once you have it, just press this install add-on, and then it's going to appear like this, and it's not going to be checked by default, so you just have to check it and enable it so that you can actually use it. And once you do that, you can just cross this out, and once you do that, you can just go to you can just press this button right here, and it's going to open these menu, and here you can just press this Blender Kit button, and you can use Blender Kit. So I'm just going to search for chessboard, and in these search filters I'm going to be searching free first. I'm going to be checking that so that we get free assets, and you can just choose any of these. So for example, I'm just going to select this one, and we're going to be removing all the chess pieces, so we just need the board. So you're going to see all these chess pieces. Just give me a sec. Alright, perfect. So I'm just going to cross this out, and I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to be going inside this chessboard hierarchy in this object, and I'm just going to be dragging this out collection, and I'm just going to be selecting this chessboard, right click, select objects, and delete. So now it's just going to delete all that, and now you're going to see that this is our chessboard. So I'm just going to be dragging it down, GZ, something like that, and then I'm going to be scaling it up, of course. Actually, so yeah, let me just scale it up. Something like that might be good. However, we are going to be obviously tweaking the scales and making it accurate. I think something like that should be good. Now let's move it again, move it down again, something like that. Just move it up a tad. Perfect, cool. So once that is done, and now this will already have its textures applied. So if I go to my look dev mode, you're going to see that this chessboard is already going to have its textures, which is great. And however, we do need to apply textures to our pawn and our king. So for that, we're going to be using a website called Polygon. Now obviously you could go ahead and create your own textures, but that's going to take a lot of time, and more importantly, it's not going to look that realistic. But if you use textures from polygon.com, they are very good textures, and most of them are paid. However, we are going to be using the ones which are free, so just press free right there, and then you can just select any of these. So I'm going to be selecting the, what do you call it, I'm going to be selecting, yeah, this one, this marble one right here. So I think that should be good. And in order to download this, by the way, you must be wondering, what is this resolution? So the higher this resolution is, the more costly it's going to be for your computer to render it. And if you have a really strong computer, then I would recommend you to go higher. But since my computer is not that strong, I would suggest you, I would just stay at 3K. So just press this free download right here. And to actually install this material, to actually import this material in Blender, Either you could connect all maps manually in the shader editor, or you could use this plugin. Just give me a second. Polygon plugin Blender, just search that, and the first link which you're gonna get, Polygon Material Converter add-on for Blender, and you can just go ahead and download this. Press this right here and install it the same way we did with the Blender kit. So just go to your edit, preferences, add-ons, and press install. Just navigate to where you downloaded that plugin, the Polygon Material Converter, and just press install. So once that is done, you're going to see in this material menu, you're going to see this Polygon Material Converter right here. And what we're going to be doing now is, I'm assuming you have downloaded this material already. So once you have downloaded this, I'm just going to go to my Polygon Material Converter, and here I'm going to press this button right here to actually browse our textures. So I'm just going to go to my materials and just browse to wherever you have downloaded it, and here we go. And I'm just going to go to my regular 3K, and we have these textures, right? So once you get to this point where you have all these textures, just press accept, and it's automatically going to load that material in. So I'm just going to press apply material, and oh, I forgot to select these objects. Just by the way, just select your pawn first and apply material, and you're going to see that it is already automatically applied, which is perfect. So if it doesn't apply automatically, if it's not UV unwrapped, so what you have to do is press tab and press A to select everything, but already I've selected everything. Press U for UV mapping menu, and then just press this smart UV project to automatically UV unwrap it, but I had already done that, so it didn't cause any problems for me. All right, so let's do the same exact thing with this king as well. So I'm just going to select this king, and instead of pressing this apply material again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this browse material menu, and I'm going to go down to this stone marble Calcutta, and I'm going to be applying it as well. So you can obviously UV unwrap this as well. Perfect. And let's do the same exact thing with this top piece as well. Alright, so now we have our textures done as well. Alright, so the next step is going to be to actually model that mirror. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a mesh, which is going to be a cylinder, and I'm just going to go to my side view, and I'm just going to press R, Y, and then 90 to rotate it 90 degrees in the Y axis. And I'm going to my front view, and I'm going to be positioning it properly, something like that, and I think something like that should be a nice scale. Obviously it's way too thick, so S and X, scale it down, just make it something like that. Something like that should be good. Perfect. So I'm just going to be moving it back like that. Perfect. And let's make sure that it's properly aligned with the floor, which it is, so we don't really need to worry about that. Now let's add a subdivision surface modifier to this subdivision surface to actually smooth this out. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be adding some loop cuts, or rather, instead of the subdivision surface modifier, we could use a bevel modifier as well. So I'm just going to remove that, add a bevel modifier. That's just going to make our lives a little easier. Or is it? Actually, let's use a subdivision surface modifier because we have these sharp edges as well, so we need to get rid of those as well. Subdivision surface modifier, and I'm going to be selecting this back face. I'm going to be insetting it a little bit, and then again, and then again. Okay, so that's just going to make it super sharp from the edges, and it's going to get rid of those weird shading issues as well. So I'm just going to be insetting this a little bit, a tad bit, and something like that should be good. However, I'm going to be, actually let's scale it down, something like that should be good, and let's extrude it inside, so something like that, and then let's inset it again so that we make this edge sharp. So that should be good. Right, that is a pretty good mirror. However, we do need to add some loop cuts here and there to make this sharper. So I'm just going to add a loop cut right there, something like that, and one right there as well, and one at the back as well, because we want this to be a pretty sharp mirror. And I'm going to be increasing the levels viewport to actually 2 should be fine, and we're going to right click and shade smooth, and we're going to go to our object data properties and go down to normals and auto smooth, just turn this on. So that's just going to make our shadings a little smoother, and it's going to fix some weird shading issues, which is going to be perfect. All right, so next up, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting this face. Actually, let's select this face and let's move it a little back, so GX, just a tad bit. I think something like that should be pretty good. However, let me just
select this face and inset it once again to make the edges super sharp, because obviously this is a mirror, it's not something which is supposed to be smooth. Okay, perfect. So that is our mirror right there, and let's move on to the next step, which is going to be to actually texture this mirror, and we're going to be making this mirror there's some reflective texture as well. But before that, let's work on this the side part, which is going to be metal. So that is another texture which we're going to use from polygon.com, and this time we should use how about we use this one. Yeah, that should be a pretty good texture, because it's reflective and it's very dirty and all that. So just press this free download button right here, and once you've downloaded that, let me just go back to Blender, and here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be applying material to this. So I'm just going to be adding this material. Let's add a material slot right there, and let's just browse press this browse button again, and let's search for that other material, which is going to be, where do I have it saved? I think it was this one. Yeah, that's it. All right, so just apply and load material, load and apply material, and let's see how it looks. It is looking pretty rough because it's not UV unwrapped, because so it's very stretched. So I'm just gonna press tab to go into edit mode, press A to select everything, U to open the UV unwrapping menu, and Smart UV project. That's just gonna make it much better, and I think that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good and perfect. So although we don't want this to be this we don't want this material to be in the center, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my solid shading mode, and I'm going to go to my front view, and I'm going to be selecting this face right here. And what I'm going to do with this face is I'm going to press Control plus to like expand my selection a little bit, and Control plus once again. I think that should be fine. Actually, I think it's too much. Let me press Control minus. I think those two faces should be selected, that one and this one layer of faces, and I think that should be good. Apart from that, I think I should what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another material slot. Just press this plus button right here, and we're going to create a new material in this, and we're just going to be assigning this. Just press assign, and this part, if I go to my shader editor, if I go to my look dev mode, you're going to see that this whole thing, this whole center part is going to have that material. Now we're going to go to our shader editor, our shading menu, and inside this we're going to be tweaking that mirror material. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having a principled BSDF, I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to be pressing Shift A, and we're going to be adding another shader, which is going to be a a glossy BSDF. Okay, so I'm just going to make that, and I'm going to be plugging this into the surface. And this roughness, we're going to be making it 0. So that's just going to make it super reflective. And basically, this is going to be your mirror. Obviously, we are going to be making some changes if we need to. But that should be fine for now. So let's actually start making the composition. And let's start, let's add the camera first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a camera. And I'm just going to move this up. So if I go to my camera by pressing this button right here, you're going to see that we can't really move our camera because... Oh, by the way, we already do have a camera, so I'm just going to delete that one. And let's go to this camera. Yeah, perfect. So if I move my viewport, you're going to see that we get out of our camera, and we don't want that. We want to position our camera with our viewport. So I'm just going to toggle this camera view. I'm going to go to view, lock, and inside this lock menu, I'm just going to lock camera to view. And now if I move my viewport, you're going to see our camera is going to go with us. So that's perfect. And one thing which I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be going to my output properties. And here the resolution, I'm going to be increasing the Y of the resolution, because we want this to be a vertical render. So I'm just going to make this something like 2200. And yeah, that should be pretty good for us. So I'm going to be positioning the camera something like that. However, I am going to be increasing the focal length to, instead of 50 millimeters, to 150 millimeters, because that's going to make it look much more it's going to make it look much more flat, and it's going to add that extra realism, because we're going to be adding some depth of field later on as well, and that's just going to make it look much better. So that is done, and apart from that, I think that should be our frame. Yeah, something like that should be our frame. Yep, something like that. Let me just unzoom a little bit, something like that, and perfect. So now I'm just going to turn that off, camera to view, just turn it off. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be so in the final render, what happened was that actually in real life the pawn was standing here, and in the reflection it was showing this king. So the way we're going to be doing that is by actually making two renders. One is going to be with the pawn in which there's going to be a pawn in real life and in the reflection as well, and the other render is going to have this king to be in both positions. So, and then in Photoshop we're going to be masking them out and we're going to be editing them, which I'm going to show you, by the way, so don't need to worry about that. So yeah, I think that is pretty cool. So apart from that, let's do the first render. So I'm going to select this king and this top thing. I'm just going to press H to hide them, and we're going to be turning off this render view as well, so it doesn't show up in renders as well. And next I'm just going to select this. Let me just place it properly. Let's go to my camera and let me just scale it up a little bit. Actually, well, one thing which we can do is if I Control Z, I can just go to Object, set origin to 3D cursor. We're just going to make this origin this 3D cursor. So if I scale it up, you're going to see that it's going to scale up from the bottom, so we don't need to like just bring it up every time we scale it up. So that should be perfect, and something like that should be good. Let's actually start working on the next part, which is going to be the lighting, and then we're going to be tweaking the composition later on. So I'm just going to go to my rendered view first, and you're going to see that it looks trash because we don't have our, because of two reasons. So first of all, we don't have good lighting, and the other reason is because we're in Eevee render engine. So I'm just going to switch to cycles, and you're going to see it immediately looks much better. However, it still obviously does not look great. Alright, so one thing which I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be going into my environment menu, this world properties, and instead of you're going to see this color right here. So this is basically the background color, right? And right now you're going to see that it's not completely black, it's a little gray, and we don't really want that. So I'm just going to select this color, and I'm going to be making it pitch black, so that it adds a lot of contrast, and it's making it look much better. So I'm just going to get out of my camera, and now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be splitting this viewport into two. I'm just going to hover over here, and I'm going to right click, vertical split, and just press it and just bring it something like that. And in this viewport, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to toggle my camera view, and I'm just going to be rendering this camera, and I can just press Control B and just specify this render region so that it doesn't render anything apart from that. So now if I just press F12 and go to my rendered mode, you're going to see that it is showing us our rendered mode, something like that, and that should be that should be fine. All right, so next up what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be tweaking the lighting, right? So I'm just going to select this light right here, and we're going to go to our light settings, and I'm just going to make this an area light first. So I personally prefer the look of area lights because it's much smoother, and I think that's going to be very good for our scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be selecting this area light, and I'm just going to be scaling it up, something like that. So the larger your scale of your light is, the softer your shadows are. So that's just a point to keep in mind, and I'm just going to be rotating it something like that, and I'm going to be bringing it right here. Perfect. It's way too from the above. I'm just going to be rotating it something like that, and I'm going to be bringing it down in the z-axis, but that's way too much because it's showing in our our mirror, which is not something I want. So I'm just going to be placing it something like that. Perfect. Cool. So that is perfect. And apart from that, what I'm going to do is let me just increase the intensity to 1500. How about that? I think that should be better. And apart from that, I am going to duplicate this light, press Shift D and just bring it here, and I'm going to be rotating it so it's basically hitting our subject from here. But right now you're going to see that it's basically all blown out and it doesn't look that great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reducing the power to something like 200, so that it like fills in some of the shadows. That's basically called a fill light, right? So there's that. And if I turn it off, you're going to see it's completely dark, and if I turn it on, you're going to see that it's it's much better. But I'm going to be tweaking, I'm going to be reducing the strength to 50 because I do want it to have a lot of contrast and difference in light. So one thing which I'm going to be doing is that you're going to see this floor right now, this chessboard is actually it's wooden, and it doesn't really go with our it doesn't really go with our marble chess pieces, right? So I'm going to be changing these material. So what I'm going to do is that this this white part, I'm just going to be adding this this right here, this stone marble Calcutta texture right here, and that's just going to be it. So that's just going to make it look much better. And if I see from another angle, you're going to see that it's going to look pretty good. And in this black square part, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be adding that same exact material, but this time I'm going to be making a slight adjustment to it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be going to google.com and I'm going to be searching for black marble. Let's search for black marble. And here what we're going to be doing is that we're just going to go to our, let's just go to some, how about we search stock photo. So let's just go to a free stock photo website. I think Unsplash, we might find something good on Unsplash. That's a free stock footage and stock footage and stock photo website. So we might find something good here. So how about so I just searched marble. Let's see. Yeah, this one's pretty good. So I think that should work. Let's download this for free, and let's go back to my scene, and I'm going to go to my shading menu. And here what we're going to be doing is that we are going to be yeah, perfect. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to select that second material, and we're going to be pressing this button, this number right here. So this is basically the, this number shows that the number of users which use this material, and the number of assets which have this material at the moment. So if you just press it, you're going to see that it's going to make another copy of that material. And if we tweak this material, it's going to make sure that it's not affecting the other materials, right? I'm just going to be dragging this into my Blender, and as an image texture, of course, and I'm going to be plugging this inside the base color. So you're going to see that. So you're going to immediately notice the difference, and basically everything else, the normals and the roughness and all that, it's taken from that same exact marble texture, but the color, the base color, is different. It's basically this other marble texture which we found online. So that is perfect. So let me just go back to my camera, and now you're going to see it looks much better, and it matches with this what do you call it? It matches with this effect a lot more. So once that is done, what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to be let's add some depth of field, because that's something we're lacking right now. But before that, let me add a rim light. So what a rim light is right now you're going to see that this mirror, only the front of this mirror is lit up, right? The back of this mirror, this mirror is not being defined properly, right? So in order to define that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be duplicating my main light, my key light, that's called a key light. I'm going to be pressing Shift D, and I'm going to be bringing this back, okay? And then I'm going to be rotating it, something like that. So you're going to see that this light is touching, this light is affecting this, this, what do you call it, this mirror from the back. But right now it's way too intense. So I'm just going to be making it 400, something like that. That's still too intense. How about 100? And I think something like that should be good. However, we can also reduce the size to make this a lot more sharper. Something like that should be pretty good. Oh, okay. All right, so another thing which I remembered is right now you're going to see this image looks kind of washed out. Okay, so what we can do to fix that is we can go to our render properties, and if you go down to our color management, you're going to see that you're going to have this option of view transform and this look. Now make sure that this view transform is set to filmic. If it's set to standard or anything like that, it's not going to look that great. So I would recommend you to set it to filmic. And this look, I'm going to set it to high contrast. And you're going to see it automatically pops, and it automatically gives our render it automatically makes our render look much better. So that's something we want. Perfect. So apart from that, another thing which I'm going to be doing is that let's add some depth of field. So I'm just going to go to my camera, this camera right here, and if we go to our camera settings, we can add this depth of field. So I'm going to turn it on, and you're going to see everything is going to go slightly blur. But if I set my focus object to be this pawn right here, you're going to see that it's actually going to blur things which are away from this. But the f-stop right now is way too high. So the higher the f-stop is, the lower the blurriness of your image is going to be, and the lower the f-stop is, the higher the blurriness of your image is going to be. So I'm just going to reduce that quite a lot. 0.1, that is just way too much. How about 0.5? How about 0.7? So we can actually switch to our look dev mode, this material preview mode, so that we can actually see the blur in real time, something like that. Just let it load, and I think that should be pretty good. However, the problem is we're not really seeing the reflections in this mode, right? And I want to make sure that the reflection is in focus. So I'm just going to go back to my rendered mode, and let's zoom in a little bit on this. just making sure that our reflection is in focus. So I'm just going to increase its f-stop slightly, just a tad bit. How about 1.2? I think 1.4 should be the sweet spot, because we don't want it to be completely in focus. We just want it to be visible. Like, we want our viewers to tell that it's actually a king and not a pawn. And although right now it's a pawn, but in the final render it's going to be a king, right? So that is what we want. I think that should be good. That should be perfect. Now let's do the final step, which is going to be to add a background. Because right now, if I go ahead and turn off my viewport guides, you're going to see the background is pitch black, and that's not something I want. That does not look that great. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to be adding a plane. So I'm just going to be adding a mesh, which is going to be a plane. And this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my top view, and I'm going to take it back. Let's rotate it 90 degrees in the y-axis, and something like 45 degrees in the x-axis. And I'm going to scale it up, something like that, so that it covers the whole frame, and that should be good. So that is our background. However, it's white at the moment, and that's not something we want. So I'm just going to make I'm going to add a material which I'm going to apply to this plane, and let's just make it almost black. Almost black. Just a very dark color, right? So right now you're going to see that this background is actually taking the light from our key light, and that's not something I want. So I'm just going to move this. I'm just going to take this background, I'm going to move it farther, and I'm going to increase it in size as well. Perfect. So actually, to light this background, to make a gradient effect in this background, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be taking my this rim light, and I'm going to be duplicating this. So let's duplicate it and take it back near to the background, something like that. That should be good. And I'm going to be converting this into a point light. So yeah, and let's go to our camera. And now I'm going to make sure that this that light is actually in the middle of this. It's right behind this mirror, right? I'm just going to be moving it something like that, and let's increase the power to something like, I don't know, 1000 watts. Now you're going to see it adds that very cool looking gradient effect. So we can even increase the radius to make it look more smooth. But I think 1000 watts is a lot. So how about like 700 watts? I just want a subtle gradient effect, and that's something which we are definitely getting. So that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to be tweaking the position of this light a tad bit, so that it's right in the middle of this mirror, right? So I think that should be a pretty good render, shouldn't it? Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. And I think we're going to be rendering it right here, and after this render is done, we're going to be rendering the one with the king, and after that we're going to be editing all this in the in Photoshop. So I'm just gonna make sure that this render view is turned on for this pawn, and yeah, let me just make sure that our samples are reasonable. So let's make this something like, I don't know, 500 maybe. Something like 500 should be good. So apart from that, I think we are good to render. So I'm just gonna press this render button right here and render image. So that is it. And it's rendering, guys. So I will see when it's done, and then we're going to be working on the king render, and then we're going to be compositing it. We're going to be editing it in Photoshop. So yeah.
Alright guys, so it has completed rendering, and our first render is basically complete. So I'm just going to go to image, save as, and let's save it wherever we want. So I'm just going to save it as pawn render. And okay, so I'm just going to save it as image, and let's go back and let's make the other render, which is going to be the king render. So I'm just going to press F12, and I'm going to be making this solid view as well. So I'm going to hide this, press this H, hide it, and hide it in render view as well. And I'm going to be making this king visible. So what I'm going to do is, actually I'm not going to hide that. Let me just bring that right now, and I'm going to be taking this king, and I'm going to be making sure that it's on the same exact position as the pawn. So I'm going to be pressing G and making sure that this is right on top of this pawn. Okay, so as you can see, it's right on top of that. Now I'm just going to hide this pawn, and now you're going to see that it's going to be on the exact same position as the pawn. So let's make sure that it's aligned with the floor as well. It is. Let's render this and let's see how it looks. Rendered. And so one thing which I'm noticing is that this piece right here, this should be rotated something like that. So it's these little things which make your which make your render look like, which make your render stand out of the crowd, right? Because generally very less people notice that, but the ones that do, they become your fans, and that's something which you should really put a lot of effort in. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go to my render image, and this is rendering as well. And so I'll see you when it's done, and then we're going to be finally editing those pictures in Photoshop. And yeah, alright guys, so the king has also rendered, and once this is done, I'm just going to go to image, save as, and we're going to be saving it as king.png. Perfect. Save this. And once all this is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm just going to close everything else because it might be slowing down my computer. Alrighty. Let's just wait for it to open. Alright, so Photoshop has opened, and I'm going to be opening, first of all, we're going to be opening the pawn inside Photoshop. So I'm just going to be dragging that in, and basically we're going to be using this, this picture, and we're just going to be copying the part, this king part in the reflection, and we're going to be pasting it right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open king in another file. I'll just copy it right here. So it's going to open it as another file, and we're going to be masking this out using the pen tool. Now obviously you can do this in other softwares as well. I think you can do it in if you're using a mobile phone, I guess you can do it on Canva. You can do it on, I don't know if you can do it on Snapseed or not, but like there are other options as well. So yeah, but I'm going to be teaching you Photoshop because that's what I use. And yeah, so I'm going to be choosing the pen tool, and we're going to be starting to mask this out. So I'm just going to go like that, and this doesn't need to be a super clean mask, but it does need to be clean from this part right here. I'm just going to be zooming in, and let me just create a gradient. Oh, sorry, not a gradient, a curve. Something like that might be good. Perfect. Oops, my bad. Zoom out, just zoom in, and let me just continue this curve properly. Just make sure that it's very precise, because if it's not, then it's not going to look that great. And I'm just going to be finishing this mask like that, and I'm just going to be pressing right click, make selection, and just make the selection, and I'm just going to press Control X. So that's just going to basically it's going to cut that. Control X, and now we're going to be pressing Control V right here, and we're going to be selecting this move tool, and we're going to be placing this right in the position where it's supposed to be. Now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make sure that it's in the correct position. You need to be very precise with this, otherwise it's not going to look good. And I think we're good to go. Perfect. So I just placed it in, and I think it looks pretty good, doesn't it? So this whole render is looking pretty good. And what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be making some adjustments in this. So we're going to be using Photoshop for our our post-processing as well. So I'm just going to go to brightness and contrast. Let me just increase the contrast a little bit, something like that, so that it's more contrasty. You might reduce the brightness, or are we going to reduce it? Something like that should be good. So yeah, something like that should be good. So we just reduced it a tad bit. And apart from that, I'm just going to select my vibrance. And we could either make it super vibrant, but as you can see, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So I'm just going to make it black and white. I'm just going to reduce the vibrance and the saturation. So I'm just going to make it a black and white render. And apart from that, let me go to adjustments again. Maybe we can select, yeah, I think we're basically good to go. So maybe we can like go to our filters, and we can sharpen, and we can just, for example, do sharpen, or we can even use unsharp mask. I'm just going to select this render, this layer, and I'm going to go to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. I'm just going to use this to sharpen this render, but not that much, of course, just a tad bit, something like that. And as you can see, I'm just going to do something like that. So that's just going to make it make it pop a little bit, and it's going to make it look much better. Something like that should be good. And I'm going to select this layer, and I'm going to be going to filter and unsharp mask. I'm just going to press that again so that it does the same exact thing with our king as well. And I think that should be pretty much it for this video, guys. That is a pretty good render. And once you want to save it, just go to File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and just save it wherever you want. I'm just going to name it Final. And that is basically it for this, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you had any problems in any part of this tutorial, then be sure to start a discussion down below, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys. Apart from that, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.